listener production.
Hi, Sasha Barbagat with you. Welcome to The Briefing. Most of our attention right now might be focused on the thrills and spills of racing at the Olympics, but let's not forget another very important race is happening in the US right now. Kamala Harris needs to pick her running mate. So who will the lucky winner be, and when will they be announced?
Within a week. By August the 7th, the Democrats have decided they are going to finalise their ticket and they'll have a vote on a virtual roll call, they're calling it, before the convention. That's August 7, so Wednesday next week.
Chas Licciardello joins Bension Siebert to unpack the top contenders in the second half of this episode. First though, let's get into the headlines with Simon Beaton. It is Wednesday, July 31st.
Hi Sash, we've got plenty to talk about with Australia's efforts at the Olympics overnight and this morning. We'll get to that in a couple of minutes at the end of the headlines. First though, we need to start with news that Rex Airlines has gone into voluntary liquidation. Speculation the regional airline was in trouble started yesterday after it suspended share trading on the ASX. Right now, Rex has cancelled all flights between major cities and has grounded all of its Boeing 737s. However, its regional routes are continuing for the moment. This might not be the end of Rex, with a range of pollies coming out to talk up the airline's importance, including Albo.
Rex received substantial government support with no conditions attached. One of the things that I expressed concern about was that no conditions, so that Rex, for example, moved away from their traditional role of being a regional airline into flights, for example, from Sydney to Melbourne.
There is a chance Rex could ditch its major city routes and revert to regional-only flights in order to survive.
I think it'd be a big loss if we lost Rex, and I think that's where Anthony Albanese, the Prime Minister, was coming out yesterday to say they were concerned about this. It would leave us with two players, that is Qantas and Virgin. We saw Bonzo go into liquidation in early July. And this move, while, you know, we want a strong airline market for Australia, I mean, also think about the employees. That's 2,000 people who are now kind of facing this uncertain future. So I'm sure that a lot of work's going to be going on behind the scenes to try and ensure that Rex can continue on into the future. But yeah, it's another airline going down in Australia. It's not good.
No.
Tensions continue to simmer between Israel and Hezbollah. The IDF claims it has now killed the commander of the militant group after launching strikes on Beirut, the capital of Lebanon. This comes after the weekend strike on the Israeli-occupied territory of Golan Heights, which saw 12 people, mostly children and teenagers, killed as they played on a football field. Hezbollah has repeatedly denied having any involvement in this attack. Simon, it is also still unclear if Mushin Shukar, who is the head of Hezbollah in Lebanon, it hasn't been confirmed that he is actually dead. Local security agents told Reuters news agency that he is still alive, so there's a lot of confusion there. And this strike isn't alone. Both sides continue to exchange fire. So this is one of those conflicts that is simmering, and we're going to have to keep a close eye on because there are concerns of all-out war.
Australia is failing to pull its weight in the global effort to reduce methane emissions, according to a Climate Council report out today. Australia joined most countries in the world to sign a global methane pledge almost 2 years ago to reduce methane emissions by 30% by 2030. But the Climate Council says the government has yet to publish a detailed plan on how they're going to achieve it.
Which seems to be what we always do when it comes to climate targets. Yeah, we'll do it. But, we don't know how we're going to do it yet. Look, most of the problem with methane in Australia comes from agriculture. Read between the lines, that's cows farting. There are calls for the government to better incentivise farmers to cut methane emissions. There is that seaweed feed that exists that can help improve the farts of cows. It sounds funny, but it's such an important step in actually cutting methane emissions. There is also calls to promote sustainable protein alternatives and also give consumers more information on the environmental effects of their food choices. So, I don't know, warning labels on meat packets, this produced this many tonnes of carbon emissions. I mean, God, we're warned about so much already. But yeah, more needs to be done clearly in this space. And finally, to the Olympics, let's start once again with gold in the pool for the Aussies. Kaylee McEwen taking out the 100-metre women's backstroke final.
Kaylee's starting to lift now.
Come on.
With 20 metres to go. Australia's golden girls trying to defend the medal. McEwen. She's going to do it. Australia's warrior wins again. What an effort. What a champion.
That audio thanks to Nine. Another impressive moment for the Aussies in the pool, Simon. This time in the water polo, though, our men's side managed to beat Serbia in one of the biggest upsets of the games so far. The Sharks were massive outsiders, but managed to down the reigning Olympic champs 8-3, and this blows their group wide open. And this is the equivalent of the men's basketballers beating the Dream Team. It's huge.
Which, speaking of, the Boomers, they suffered their first loss of the games, going down 93-83 to Canada, while there was heartbreak for the women in the rugby sevens who missed out on bronze after losing to the United States after the final whistle, 14-12, and it was prior to that looking likely that they were going to get it.
I know. It's so disappointing. Another cool thing that happened this morning in Paris was Team USA winning gold in the gymnastics. Of course, completely carried, not completely, but carried quite a lot by Simone Biles, who is just making this incredible return.
Yeah.
There's a documentary out on her that explains what happened in Tokyo and why this is so miraculous for her to come back and be this incredible. And it's really interesting. This has been the hot ticket in Paris, has been the gymnastics on the days that Simone Biles has been competing. There's been celebs and famous people and sporting stars, and everyone's turning out to watch them. So that's been the big one. And yeah, I can understand why Simone Biles is incredible.
She is.
Hey, Simon, look, before we go, this is your last day with us. I wanted to say, on behalf of the entire team, thank you so much for being here, for your incredible positive energy, for your commitment to delivering an incredible product for our beautiful listeners. I just wanted to shout you out on the pod because you deserve it, and we wish you all the very best in what's coming up for you.
Thanks, Sash. I'm going to miss it.
We'll miss you too. Look, the news doesn't stop though. Next up, it is our deep dive. Bension chatted with Chas Licciardello about who Kamala Harris's running mate could be. And if you do want to watch this interview, it is up right now on our YouTube channel. Search Listener Newsroom to see it.
Hey, Bension here. Kamala Harris memes have been surging on socials this week, but coconut tree brat talk does not a presidential election victory make. There's still 97 days between now and voting, and if she wants to turn that momentum into votes in swing states, her next big decision is who to tap as her running mate. Usually, nominating a vice president doesn't have a huge effect on an average US presidential election, but this is no average US presidential election. On the Republican side, Trump's decision to choose JD Vance as his running mate last week. Now, remember, this is a man who once privately described Trump as America's Hitler. That's hurt Trump's campaign, and there's been serious talk of Trump firing him. On the Democratic side, Kamala Harris is vying to be the first female US president, the first black female US president, and the first South Asian US president. And she's got a long list of prominent, spicy white men to choose from. Chas Licciardello is a US political watcher, comedian, and co-host of Planet America on the ABC. Chas, when can we expect Harris to make a call on who her new running mate will be?
Within a week. By August the 7th, the Democrats have decided they are going to finalise their ticket, and they'll have a vote on a virtual roll call, they're calling it, before the convention. That's August 7th, so Wednesday next week.
Is there a lot of strategy in it? And how important is the VP pick for a presidential candidate?
Well, if you ask people, say 5 years ago, 8 years ago, how important the VP pick was, they'd say, not in the slightest. It doesn't make any difference whatsoever. And then Biden became president because he was Obama's VP. So it seems like it can be important sometimes. I would say that there's probably more strategy that goes into it than should. There's certainly no evidence that the VP selection can win you a state. We all talk about it like they can, but certainly the history doesn't suggest it does make a huge difference, yet we all act like it does. I suppose it's just one of those quarterback at home kind of scenarios, like when you watch sports and you think you're the coach of the team, you go, oh, they should do this, they should do that, and we all like to do that with the VP as well. But honestly, I'm not sure it makes a huge difference.
Okay, well, let's all be that coach at home. Let's go through some of the top contenders.
Yes.
We'll start with Transport Secretary Pete Buttigieg. I just want to play you some audio from what he said on a New York Times podcast called The Interview when he was asked what it would mean for a gay man such as himself to be picked as vice president.
15 years ago, when I took the oath of commission to join the military, it wasn't just some unfortunate prejudicial norm. It was the law of this country that I would be fired for being gay. That's changed. And like anybody who is a first, I'm mindful of what that means, and I try to live up to what that might mean to others.
He's a very powerful speaker, and he's certainly had a very good few days, but some people say he is a risk. How do you think that Harris would be weighing him up as a candidate?
His strengths are undoubtedly his ability to conduct interviews in hostile territory. He is the ambassador to Fox News, essentially. And I've never seen him flustered on Fox News. He goes there and he represents, well, usually it's Joe Biden, as effectively as anyone possibly could. And I think he kicks a lot of goals. So that is definitely his strength, that Kamala Harris could send him out and know that he is the ultimate spin meister for whatever the situation is. And that's useful. That's useful in an election campaign. And if she becomes president, that'll be useful for her presidency. The other side is that he hasn't really shown necessarily much of an aptitude on the stump as far as a campaigner goes. He has pretty much zero experience as having some kind of role which would prepare himself for the presidency. Like, he was the mayor of a small town, a very small town, and then he audaciously ran for president off the back of that. Since then, he's been transportation secretary, which isn't really preparation for a president. These aren't the best qualifications.
But we do also have to talk about identity in this race, because Kamala Harris would be the first woman, the first black woman, also the first South Asian person to be US president, and this would be an openly gay man as her vice presidential pick. Do you think that America is ready for a ticket like that?
I mean, look, it's a good question about whether you can have too much representation. Whether you got, like, it's actually something that Democrats are discussing amongst themselves. Do we just need the most boring white man we can find? Because we've already got a very, very diverse head of the ticket. So we don't want to scare people by having double diversity. Honestly, I reckon that it's not such an issue for Pete Buttigieg, because I think that he, even though he would be the first gay person, I think he's the least threatening possible individual you could possibly have who's diverse. He, yes, it would be a first, but I don't think he makes much of his sexuality. I think he plays as white bread and as vanilla as you possibly can. So I don't think that would be a problem. I think his problem is his experience, essentially.
Okay, let's talk about Arizona Senator Mark Kelly. He's got a pretty extraordinary life story that he would bring to the race.
He certainly does. He's got military background. He's an astronaut. That's pretty cool. He's also the husband of Gabby Giffords, who was an up-and-comer herself a few years back until she got shot in the head, and he has single-handedly looked after her for the last 13 years and has helped her, I wouldn't say recover, but live from then on in, and looked after her. And it's so he's got an amazing life story. He brings a lot to the ticket because he is a senator in Arizona, which is a state that until very recently Democrats had zero chance of winning in. So that's impressive that he could win there. He has a demonstrable ability to cross the aisle in the Senate and to make bipartisan reform as the president of the Senate, which is what the vice president is. That would actually be really useful for him. If Kamala Harris was to win the presidency, she would be facing a Republican Senate, guaranteed Republican Senate. And so she will need bipartisan help. Mark Kelly's exactly the person who could give it to her. So that's very useful. Also, he happens to be strong where Democrats are weak. He is very good on guns. He is very good on immigration. Two of the issues where Democrats at times scare middle America. And so I think that he would be a huge asset to the ticket in those regards. Now, what's his weaknesses? His biggest weakness is that despite the fact he's this military astronaut guy, he's actually, I don't know how to put this in a diplomatic way, but he's pretty small. He's pretty small and he's not very imposing and he doesn't have much gravitas and he's a bit like a hobbit. And that's a very superficial thing to say, but it's just, we're talking about American politics here. It's a superficial place.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the second thing I would say about him, and this is probably more important, there's no guarantee if he leaves the Arizona Senate seat that they're going to be able to replace him with a Democrat. Like someone else will have to run in 2026, and Arizona is a hard place for a Democrat to run. So they might be kissing goodbye a Senate seat, and they might need that Senate seat in the intervening 6 years after that. So that's the downside of Mark Kelly.
Who else should we be keeping our eye on?
Josh Shapiro is always at the top of these considerations. He is the governor of Pennsylvania. He is close to the most charismatic politician in America at the moment. He's certainly someone who everyone is expecting to run and probably win the presidency in the not-too-distant future. If you haven't ever heard Josh Shapiro speak, you'll be shocked when you do because he is Barack Obama. Even though he's a white Jewish guy, he is Barack Obama.
Let me begin by talking about our 100th mayor. Herself a history maker.
Yes.
A friend for 20 years in public service. Someone who is indeed walking the walk, making our city safer, making sure our city is cleaner.
He has the same visual mannerisms. He has the same voice. He has the same cadence. He has the same everything. The guy has obviously spent some time in the mirror trying to be Barack Obama. and the thing about him, though, is that he's not just an impersonator. He's better than Barack Obama in a lot of things. He's not quite as good at the stem winder speech as Barack Obama in his famous convention speech, but off the cuff in an interview at a press conference, he's way better than Barack Obama. He never says he never says he never gets professorial, he never gets academic. He gives short, sharp, intelligent, usually humorous answers. He's a very, very good politician. So he would be right up at the top of any considerations. The negative on him, it's a very, very obvious negative, and that is that he is the most pro-Israel Democrat in America right now. And that is not a good place to be as far as the Democrat base goes right at this moment. The real poison chalice actually might be Kamala Harris running for president. And what I mean by that is if she wins, it might not be so easy as people might think. And the reason I say that is because of two reasons. The first of which is she is not going to have the Senate. I promise you, she will not have the Senate. Not just she won't have the Senate for the first 2 years, she won't have the Senate for 4 years. There's almost no way in which the way the Senate seats have dropped, that are up for grabs this year and the ones that will be up for grab in 2026, it's almost impossible to see Democrats winning the Senate in the next 4 years. So for her presidency, she will never be able to pass any legislation without Republicans say so. Now, I don't know where you've been for the last 5-6 years. Republicans aren't in the habit of giving Democrats many free rides these days, and they will want to oppose her hard. The last time there was a black president, you might recall Barack Obama got opposed hard by the Republicans, and I think you can expect the same thing again. Barack Obama could get away with it early on because he had a big majority in the Senate, but when he lost the Senate, he got nothing done. He couldn't even get a Supreme Court justice through. And that will be Kamala Harris from day one. She will not be able to get a thing through. She might not even get her cabinet through because the Senate has the vote on that. And that's the first thing. The second thing is if she wins the presidency, you know what that means? That means Trump is going to jail. And if you thought that the Republicans were unwilling to play ball beforehand. You wait till after Trump goes to jail. They will be as obstructive as humanly possible. So she could have a horrible 4 years in the presidency. Talk about poison chalices.
Well, it's going to be fascinating and very concerning to watch. Chas Licciardello, thanks so much for joining us again on The Briefing.
No problems, anytime.
Chas Licciardello there. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Briefing. That's it for now. As always, we'd love it if you could share this ep with someone you think might enjoy it. And if you want to keep up with our other content, you can check us out on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast and on TikTok and YouTube. Just search Listener Newsroom. And we'll be back in your feed with another ep this afternoon from 3. I'm Bension Siebert. Catch you next time.
Listener.